The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord hummed with the low thrum of translators and the rustle of alien hides against polished stone benches. Holographic displays flickered above the central dais, projecting the swirling arms of the Milky Way like a fragile web. Ambassador Elara Voss sat at the human delegation's curved table, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the armrest. At 42, she was the youngest envoy Earth had sent in decades, chosen for her sharp mind and unyielding grit rather than diplomatic polish. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Ren, her security attaché, scanned the room with eyes that missed nothing. His broad shoulders tense under the crisp blue uniform, a reminder that humans didn't come to these meetings unarmed in spirit, if not in fact. Across the aisle, Delegate Zorith of the Vexery Collective loomed in his exosuit, his multifaceted eyes glinting like shattered obsidian. The Vexery had called this emergency session, their probe networks whispering of human expansion into neutral sectors. Zorith's mandibles clicked in what passed for impatience among his kind, and he leaned forward, activating his podium with a claw. Fellow delegates, his voice buzzed through the universal feed, laced with synthetic calm. The Terran Alliance's unchecked mining operations threaten the stability of the Outer Rim. Their vessels encroach on sacred nebulae, harvesting resources without regard for interstellar law. I move for condemnation. Isolation of Sol system, effective immediately. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Krell from Andromeda nodded their bulbous heads in agreement, their communal mind link pulsing faint approval. Elara felt the weight of eyes on her, curious, accusatory, dismissive. Earth had clawed its way into the Concord only 50 years ago, a backwater species with warp drives cobbled from scavenged wrecks. They were tolerated, not respected. Kai shot her a sidelong glance, his voice a low rumble. They're stacking the deck. The Vexery own half the voting blocks. She nodded, keeping her expression neutral. Let them. We've got facts, not favors. Elara had spent months preparing dossiers, scans showing how human tech cleaned pollutants from those same nebulae, turning toxic clouds into habitable zones. But facts rarely swayed votes when pride was at stake. The chamber's arbiter, a serene Lumari named Thaler with skin like rippling water, raised a frond hand. The motion is tabled. Debate begins. Delegate Voss, your response? Elara stood, smoothing her jacket as she approached the dais. The air recyclers hummed cooler here, carrying scents of ozone and alien spices. She activated her own display, pulling up a hollow of the affected sector. A before and after swirl of gray sludge transforming to vibrant blues. Esteemed delegates, she began, her voice steady, the Vexery paint humans as vandals, but our actions restore what their endless probing has depleted. Isolation would doom not just Earth, but the Rim's ecosystems we all rely on. Zorith's laugh scraped like chitin on metal. Restoration? Your crude machines scar the void. We have evidence. Your colony on Epsilon Eridani extracts rare isotopes at rates that destabilize local gravity wells. He flicked a data crystal into the shared feed, and schematics bloomed, human rigs drilling deep, seismic ripples echoing outward. Elara's jaw tightened. That colony was a lifeline for Earth's growing fleet, pulling just enough to fuel defenses against pirate swarms. Deny it and ships would rust in orbit. She countered quickly, overlaying her own scans. Those scars are controlled fissures, venting excess energy safely. Without us, the Vexery's own relays would overload from the buildup. The chamber stirred. A few neutral delegates leaned in, their auras flickering with doubt. But Zorith pressed, his claws gesturing sharply. Semantics. The Concord Charter demands consensus. I call for a preliminary vote, condemn Earth or face the precedent of lawlessness. The arbiter's fronds quivered. So moved. Votes in 5 cycles. Kai muttered under his breath as Elara returned to her seat. They're rushing it. We need more time to sway the independents. She met his gaze, seeing the flicker of worry in his dark eyes. Earth couldn't afford isolation. Trade routes severed meant famine on the homeworld, colonies cut adrift. Yet something in Zorith's haste felt off, like a predator overplaying its lunge. As the voting chimes began, Elara's mind raced. The hollow tallies climbed, Vexery blocks solid, Krell aligned, but the fringe worlds wavering. One clever adaptation, she thought, one thread pulled and the whole web might unravel. The final chime echoed, and the chamber fell silent, awaiting the verdict that could chain humanity to its cradle forever. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle seat as the engines thrummed to life, the low hum vibrating through her bones. The viewport framed the sprawling docking bays of the Galactic Concordance Station, a glittering hive of spires and transit tubes that dwarfed even Earth's orbital habitats. She'd arrived unannounced, her diplomatic credentials flashing urgent priority codes that cut through the bureaucracy like a laser. Now, as the shuttle pulled away, the station receded, but the weight of what she'd just witnessed clung heavier than the artificial gravity. Her co-pilot, Jax Harlan, a wiry engineer with grease-stained fingers and a perpetual squint, glanced over from the controls. "You gonna tell me what that was about, Cap? One minute we're hauling cargo from the outer rim, next you're storming into some council chamber like you own the place." Ilara rubbed her temples, the faint scar across her left one itching under the strain. Brave to a fault, that's what they called her back on the colony ships. Reckless, more like. But hesitation had cost lives before, and she wasn't about to let it happen again. "The vote," she said finally, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "They're condemning Earth. Resource violations, they claim. But it's a setup. The Krell Dominion's pulling strings to choke our supply lines." Jax whistled low, his hands dancing over the console to plot their course back to the nearest human outpost. He was the cautious one, always double-checking seals and scanning for anomalies, but his eyes lit up with that familiar spark of defiance. "Condemning? As in isolation protocols? Blockades?" He paused, the shuttle banking smoothly into the traffic lanes. "That's not just paperwork, Ilara. That's war without the shooting." She nodded, staring at the starfield unfolding ahead, pinpricks of light against the void. The Concordance had been Earth's ticket to the stars, a fragile alliance of species sharing tech and trade routes. But the Krell, those hulking cephalopod overlords with their fleets of bioengineered dreadnoughts, had been eyeing human expansion for cycles. This vote? It was their excuse to starve the colonies, force surrender without firing a shot. The comms panel beeped, an incoming transmission from the station. Ilara hit accept, and a holographic face materialized. Lyra Voss, no relation despite the name, a avian diplomat from the neutral feathered enclave. Her feathers ruffled in agitation, iridescent blues and greens shimmering under the hollow light. "Captain Voss, you cannot simply barge in and demand a recess. The council is in uproar." Ilara leaned forward, her jaw set. "Good. Let them squawk. I showed them the manifests. Earth's not hoarding resources. We're innovating with them. Those fusion recyclers we shipped? They're turning asteroid scrap into breathable air for 3 systems." Lyra's beak clicked in frustration, a sound like distant castanets. She was witty, quick with barbs that disarmed foes, but earnest in her alliances. "Your evidence is compelling, but the Krell ambassador dismissed it as primitive tinkering. The vote resumes in hours. If it passes, your worlds face embargo. No trade, no aid. Starvation in the void." Jax muttered under his breath, adjusting the shuttle's shields against a sudden ion storm warning. "Primitive? We've jury-rigged half their tech with spit and hope. Tell her about the drive mod, Cap, the one that shaved 2 days off the run to Vega." Ilara shot him a look but waved it off. "Lyra, we need time. Get me allies in there. The Enclave's got sway. Remind them what happens if the Krell monopolize the core routes." The hologram flickered as Lyra tilted her head, considering. "Risky. The Dominion spies are everywhere. But, very well. I'll delay with procedural challenges. Meet me at Bay 17 upon return. And Captain, bring that ingenuity of yours. The galaxy underestimates humans at its peril." The transmission cut, leaving the cockpit in tense silence broken only by the ship's soft alerts. Ilara unstrapped, pacing the narrow aisle. The challenge wasn't just the vote, it was the isolation it would breed. Earth's outposts were tough, built on grit and makeshift repairs, but cut off? They'd wither. She thought of her brother on Mars Prime, coaxing hydroponics from Martian regolith, and the fire in her chest hardened. Jax glanced back, his voice low. "Plan? We can't fight a fleet with this rust bucket." Not fight, Ilara said, stopping to stare at the NAV chart, her mind racing through vectors and contingencies. Outsmart. If the vote's rigged, we expose the riggers. Hack their comms, leak the bribes, whatever it takes. He grinned, that crooked smile cracking his stubbled face. Knew I signed on for more than hauling crates. As the shuttle accelerated into the black, the ion storm brewed on the sensors. A swirling maelstrom of charged particles that could fry their systems if they misjudged the jump. Ilara settled back, her hand hovering over the manual override. Tension coiled like a spring, but so did resolve. The galaxy thought it could condemn Earth? They'd learn soon enough. Humans didn't just survive, they thrived on the edge. But as the first tendrils of the storm lashed their hull, sparking against the shields, Ilara wondered if they'd make it back in time. One wrong burst, and their clever plan ended in static. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her shuttle's console, her knuckles whitening against the worn leather. The stars streaked past the viewport like indifferent witnesses, but her mind replayed the council chamber's chaos, the holographic vote tally flickering to condemnation, the alien delegates' smug nods, and Ambassador Hale's defiant stand. Earth was isolated now, trade routes severed, colonies cut off. She punched in the coordinates for the nearest relay station, a neutral outpost on the fringe of Kalar space. Time was bleeding away, the first blockades would hit within hours. The shuttle shuddered as it dropped from hyperspace, the relay station looming like a skeletal spider in the void. Ilara scanned the docking logs, mostly automated drones, a few civilian haulers dodging the new edicts. No enforcers yet, but that wouldn't last. She sealed her vac suit and cycled the airlock, boots clanging against the grated deck. The station's corridors hummed with the low buzz of life support systems, lit by harsh blue strips that cast long shadows. A maintenance bot trundled by, its optic sensor whirring indifferently. In the comms hub, she found Jax Harlan hunched over a jury-rigged terminal, his grease-streaked face illuminated by scrolling data streams. Jax was the best shadow runner she'd ever known. Wiry, quick with a sarcasm that could defuse a plasma grenade, but his eyes always held that undercurrent of Earth's stubborn grit. Voss, he muttered without looking up, fingers flying across the haptic keys. Heard the news. Galaxy's got a hard-on for paperwork now. What's the play? Ilara slid into the seat beside him, pulling up the blockade schematics. Red lines crisscrossed the map, alien fleets positioning like wolves around a wounded pack. Hale's buying us time with diplomacy, but we need intel. Real-time feeds from the outer rims. Can you slice through their encryption without tripping alarms? Jax snorted, leaning back to crack his neck. Their encryption? It's like locking your door with a smiley face. But if I poke too hard, every Vexery cruiser in the sector lights up. He tapped a sequence, and a cascade of encrypted packets bloomed on the screen. Ship manifests, patrol routes, even whispered comms between delegates. One fragment caught her eye, a reference to Project Veil, something buried in the condemnation bill, tied to resource hoarding accusations against Earth. The station lurched suddenly, klaxons blaring from the overhead vents. Ilara's heart slammed against her ribs. What the hell? Proximity alert? Jack said, already pulling up external cams. A Vexery interceptor ghosted into view, its sleek hull glinting like obsidian under the station's floodlights. Not a blockade runner, this was deliberate. The alien ship's docking clamp extended with a metallic groan, locking on without clearance. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, heavy, deliberate. Ilara grabbed her sidearm, a compact pulse pistol modified for zero-G accuracy. We move. Back tunnel to the auxiliary bay. Jax nodded, yanking a data spike from the terminal and pocketing it. They dashed through the maintenance shafts, the air thick with the tang of ozone and recycled sweat. Behind them, the airlock hissed open, and guttural Vexery commands barked through the vents, search patterns no mercy. In the dim glow of emergency lights, they reached the auxiliary bay, where Ilara's shuttle waited like a faithful steed. But as Jax hotwired the doors, a new ping hit her wrist comm. Hale's voice strained but steady. Ilara, it's worse than we thought. The vote wasn't just isolation, it's a pretext. They're after the Veil tech. Get out now. The doors slid open with a screech and they piled in, Jack sealing it just as armored shadows swarmed the bay's edge. Ilara fired the engines, the shuttle bucking free with a roar that vibrated through her bones. Alarms wailed as they blasted into open space, the interceptor peeling off in pursuit. Jax patched the spike's data into the NAV. Project Veil wasn't Earth's secret. It was a galactic safeguard, a human-invented shield against the core's expanding wormhole storms. The aliens knew it, and condemning Earth meant claiming it for themselves. Ilara banked hard, dodging a warning shot that lit the void in crimson. They think we're hoarding salvation while the galaxy burns. Idiots. Her hands steadied on the controls, plotting a blind jump to the nearest human outpost. The stakes had twisted. Now it was Earth's ingenuity against their greed, and the first real fight was just beginning. The stars blurred again, but this time they carried the weight of a counterstrike. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they skimmed the edge of the asteroid field. The viewport ahead framed a jagged silhouette against the starfield. Crag 9, the neutral outpost where the Council's envoys were gathering for the pre-vote summit. Her first officer, Lieutenant Rao, punched coordinates into the NAV console, his fingers steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. Scans show 3 Council ships already docked, Rao said, voice low. No sign of the Vexery delegation yet. That's our window. Ilara nodded, her mind racing through the contingencies they'd drilled since leaving Sol. The vote loomed in 2 cycles. Condemn Earth for reckless bioengineering after that colony virus scare, or let humanity slide into isolation. But they weren't here to beg. The data crystal in her pocket held the proof. Vexery tech had seeded the outbreak, not human labs. Exposed that, and the galaxy's unity cracked. The shuttle banked sharply, dodging a tumbling rock the size of a freighter. Alarms chirped once, twice. Rao swore under his breath. Debris fields thicker than intel said. Pushing thrusters. Ilara's comms officer, Mira, leaned forward from the rear. Incoming hail from the outpost. They're clearing us for approach, but they mentioned a security sweep. Routine, they claim. Nothing felt routine anymore. Ilara keyed her mic. Outpost control, this is human shuttle Orion's Hope. Transmitting clearance codes now. Static crackled, then a gravelly voice responded. Likely a Crag native, all throat sacks and suspicion. Codes accepted. Bay 3. And Ambassador Voss? Keep your weapons powered down. We've had incidents. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud, sealing them in. Ilara stood first, smoothing her uniform. Rao holstered his sidearm discreetly. Mira pocketed the crystal's backup drive. They moved as a unit down the ramp, the outpost's dim corridors greeting them with the scent of recycled air and ozone. Crag 9 was a hive of mismatched architecture. Bulbous alien spires grafted onto human-style bulkheads, lit by flickering biolum strips. Envoys milled about the central atrium. Towering Solari with their iridescent scales, squat Burani chittering in clusters. No humans, save for a lone trader in the corner nursing a drink. Their contact waited by a sealed conference pod. Zara, the rogue Vexery analyst who defected after the virus truth surfaced. Her tentacles writhed nervously under her cloaking robe, eyes darting. You're late, she hissed in accented galactic standard. The Solari are pushing for an early quorum. If they lock the agenda without us, easy, Ilara cut in, voice calm but firm. She placed a hand on Zara's arm, feeling the subtle quiver. We stick to the plan. Present the crystal during the tech demo. Rao, you handle the upload. Rao gave a curt nod, but as they approached the pod's iris door, it hissed open prematurely. A Solari enforcer stepped out, its scales flushing crimson, anger or excitement. Ambassador Voss. The Council requests your presence immediately. Alone. Ilara's pulse quickened. This wasn't protocol. My team comes with standard procedure. The enforcer's mandibles clicked. Council's orders. The vote's shadow proceedings have complications. Zara's tentacles tightened around Ilara's wrist. It's a trap. They know about the crystal. Mira whispered urgently, we abort? Back to the shuttle? No time for retreat. Ilara met the enforcer's gaze. Fine. But if I'm not out in 10, my team breaches. She followed into the pod, the door sealing behind her with a finality that echoed in her chest. Inside the chamber was a pressure cooker of egos. Hollow displays flickered with vote tallies, Earth's condemnation hovering at 60%. The Vexery High Envoy, a sleek figure named Thaler, lounged at the head table, his eyes gleaming with false welcome. Boss, we've been discussing your world's contributions. Care to elaborate on that virus before the full assembly? Alara's mind whirred. How much did they know? She slid into a seat, buying time. Elaborate? I'd rather share evidence. Her hand brushed the crystal in her pocket, but Thaler's smile widened. Oh, we have evidence too. Of human sabotage. A hollow projected, falsified logs, timestamps doctored to pin the outbreak on Sol Labs. The room murmured. Alara's stomach dropped. Their plan, upload the real data during the demo, now it was tainted before launch. She keyed her hidden comm to Rao. Stand by. It's bad. Outside, Rao paced the atrium, Mira scanning for exits. Zara's eyes widened as a squad of mixed enforcers, Solari and Burani, converged on their position. They're sealing the base. We need to move. The first shot glanced off Rao's shoulder plate, sizzling the air. He dove behind a pillar, drawing his pistol. Mira, get that crystal to the main terminal. Zara, cover. Chaos erupted in the atrium, shouts and blasts ricocheting off the walls. Alara, trapped inside, slammed her fist on the table. This is a setup. The Vexery orchestrated it all. Thaler laughed, a wet rasp. Prove it, human. Before your friends become debris. Alara's resolve hardened. She'd fight her way out if needed, Earth's fate hung on it. But as the pod's alarms, Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Odysseus engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the last skirmish with the Vexery swarm. Her crew, 12 souls strong, handpicked from Earth's forgotten outposts, watched in tense silence. Jax, her wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk, tapped at his console, rerouting power from non-essentials to the shields. Shields at 80%, Cap. That swarm's closing fast, looks like 1,000 drones, give or take. Alara nodded, her jaw set. The Vexery vote in the Galactic Concord had branded humanity as reckless expanders, condemning their colonies to isolation. But out here on the fringe of the Orion Arm, politics meant nothing. Survival did. The Odyssey was their last supply runner, carrying vaccines for the plague-ravaged worlds the Concord had abandoned. If they failed, billions would starve or worse. Helm, evasive pattern Delta. Don't let them box us in. Lieutenant Mira Kane, at navigation, spun the ship into a corkscrew dive, stars blurring on the screen. Alarms blared as the first Vexery drones latched onto the hull, their acidic barbs eating through outer plating. Alara's mind raced. The initial plan had been a straight shot through the nebula, masking their signature. But the swarm had adapted, predicting their route like they had eyes everywhere. Jax, what's our counter? He wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying. Rigging a feedback loop in the comms array. It'll broadcast a false warp signature, draw half of them off. But it'll fry our long-range sensors for a day. A beat. Your call. The ship shuddered under another impact. Alara glanced at the tactical display, the swarm converging, a glittering cloud of death. Zara, their alien liaison from the neutral Trellian enclave, leaned forward from her station. Her iridescent scales shifted with unease, but her voice remained steady. Human, this deception may work once. The Vexery learn. Quickly. Alara met her gaze. Zara had risked her standing to smuggle them intel on the swarm's patterns, cautious by nature, yet here she was, betting on humanity's grit. Once is all we need. Do it, Jax. The engineer hit the switch. A pulse erupted from the Odyssey, invisible waves scattering the drones like startled insects. Half the swarm veered toward the phantom signal, buying them a narrow window. Mira whooped, plotting a course through the thinning field. We're clear, pushing to max thrust. But triumph soured fast. As they burst into open space, a new alert pierced the bridge, the Odysseus engines sputtering, fuel lines compromised by a stray barb. Jax cursed, diving under the console. One of those bastards got through. We're venting plasma. 30 minutes tops before we go dark. Elara stood, the weight of command pressing down. The Concorde's condemnation echoed in her thoughts. Not just isolation but active blockades like this swarm enforcing their edict. Earth's ingenuity had built this ship from scraps, but now it teetered on failure. Options. Now. Zara's eyes narrowed, calculating. The Trellian outpost is 2 light minutes coreward. No Concorde patrols there. But docking blind, risky. Mira shook her head. Without sensors we'll drift right into their defenses. Or worse, the nebula's gravity wells. Jax emerged, toolkit in hand. I can patch the engines with the spare fusion cells, but it'll take time we don't have. Unless. His smirk returned, faint but defiant. We vent the cargo bay, use the vaccines as bait. Lure the remaining drones into a kill zone, buy us the repair window. Elara's stomach twisted. The vaccines, Earth's lifeline to the fringe worlds, synthesized from human blood and sheer will. Sacrificing them meant dooming those colonies. But the alternative was losing the ship and everyone on it. She paced, the bridge lights casting long shadows. Zara watched her, silent, trusting the humans' resolve. Negative on the bait, Elara said finally, voice firm. We're not trading lives for cargo. Jax, how long to jury-rig a slingshot using the debris field? Pull us toward the outpost on momentum. He blinked then grinned wider. Genius. 10 minutes to set the charges, controlled blast to nudge us. Risky as hell but it'll work. As the crew scrambled, Elara settled back, eyes on the stars. The vote had aimed to break humanity but out here, it forged them stronger. The Odyssey groaned under the strain, drones still nipping at their heels, but for the first time hope flickered amid the chaos. They would reach the outpost. They had to. The galaxy's condemnation be damned, Earth's people wrote their own survival. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones as it hurtled toward the flickering anomaly. The view screen showed a swirling vortex of plasma and debris, the remnants of what the Zifri sensors had flagged as a dimensional rift. Her team, Dr. Liam Reyes, the quick-witted xenobiologist, and Sergeant Kira Novak, the unflinching Marine, sat strapped in behind her, their faces lit by the erratic glow. Captain, readings are off the charts, Liam said, his fingers dancing over his datapad. This isn't natural. It's like the fabric of space is tearing. If it's tied to the condemnation vote's fallout, we might be looking at a chain reaction from those warp signatures we detected on Earth. The Galactic Council had voted to isolate Earth 3 cycles ago, branding humanity a plague vector, after a misinterpreted outbreak of some benign flu turned into interstellar hysteria. But the humans had fought back, not with weapons but with data, exposing the Council's own hidden bioweapon labs. Now rifts like this were popping up across the frontier, and the blame was circling back. Novak, prep the containment field generator, Elara ordered, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. If we can stabilize it, we prove it's not our tech causing this. Kira unstrapped with practiced efficiency, hauling the bulky device from the storage locker. On it, ma'am. But if those Zifri patrols show up, we're sitting ducks. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the rift's outer edge, alarms blaring. Elara's hands flew to the controls, weaving through tendrils of energy that clawed at the hull. Sweat beaded on her forehead. One wrong maneuver, and they'd be scattered across dimensions. Liam leaned forward, eyes wide. There, scans show a ship signature inside. Not ours. Krellian? They were the loudest voices in the vote. Elara's mind raced. The Krellians, with their rigid hierarchies and grudge-holding fleets, had pushed hardest for Earth's condemnation. If they were experimenting here, it could explain the rifts, failed attempts to weaponize the anomalies against human colonies. Lock on, she said. We're going in. The shuttle plunged deeper, the world outside fracturing into shards of light. Kira braced against the bulkhead, the generator humming to life in her arms. Fields charging. Give me 30 seconds. But the seconds stretched as a shadow loomed on the screen, a hulking Krellian destroyer half-phased into reality, its weapons ports glowing. It fired a probing shot, the beam grazing the shuttle's shields with a deafening crack. Evasive. Elara barked, yanking the stick. The craft spun, engine screaming. Liam cursed, rerouting power to shields. We're holding, but not for long. Kira slammed the generator onto the deck and activated it, a blue dome flickering into existence around them. It pushed back the rift's chaos, buying time. Fields up. Now what? Elara eyed the destroyer. No retreat, not with the galaxy watching, waiting for humans to falter. Hail them. Let's see if they're here to talk or finish what the vote started. The comms crackled open, and a gravelly Krellian voice boomed through. Human vessel, you trespass in sacred space. The Council's decree stands, Earth's interference ends here. Elara leaned into the mic, her tone ironclad. Sacred space? This is your mess, Captain. Our probes show your warp experiments destabilizing the sector. Pull back or we'll expose it to the entire Council. Silence, then a low rumble of laughter. Bold words from insects. Witness the true power of condemnation. The destroyer lunged, its phased cannons charging. Elara's team moved as one, Liam jamming their sensors with a burst of human-coded interference, Kira fine-tuning the field to encompass the enemy ship. The shuttle darted close, too close, the rifts tugging at them like greedy hands. Now! Elara shouted. Kira trigger-ed the expansion. The blue field snapped outward, enveloping the destroyer in a stabilizing web. The Krellian vessel bucked, its weapons fizzling as the anomaly clamped down. Alarms wailed on the enemy bridge, audible even through the comms. What sorcery is this? The captain roared. Human ingenuity, Elara replied, guiding the shuttle out. Tell your council, condemn Earth again, and we'll seal every rift with your ships inside. As they cleared the vortex, the rift began to close, the destroyer trapped in stasis. Liam exhaled, slumping back. That was too close. But we got the data, proof it's their tech. Kira secured the generator, a grim smile cracking her face. One less vote against us. Elara watched the anomaly fade, the stars steadying. Victory, but Pyrrhic, the Krellians would retaliate and the galaxy's fractures were deepening. Earth's fight was far from over. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones as they hurtled toward the neutral station orbiting Vega Prime. The vote had passed 2 days ago. Earth condemned as a reckless progenitor species, their colonies slated for quarantine and their tech seized under the Galactic Accord. But Elara knew better. The Xeno-diplomats had underestimated humanity's reach, just like they always did. Beside her Dr. Kai Rin leaned over the tactical display, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The signal's holding, he murmured, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Kai was the cautious one, always double-checking variables, but today his eyes burned with that quiet fire Elara had come to rely on. We've looped the relay through the old mining drones. If the Krell fleet doesn't pick up the anomaly, we're ghosts. Elara nodded, her jaw tight. The plan was simple on paper. Infiltrate the station's data core, upload the counter-narrative. Not some plea for mercy, humans didn't beg. Proof. Evidence of the galaxy's own dirty secrets, the backroom deals that had rigged the vote. The Zorathian cartel bribing delegates, the insectoid hives suppressing migration data to hoard resources. Earth's crimes were a smokescreen for their expansion. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the docking queue, automated beacons pinging their fabricated IDEN codes. Across from them, Lieutenant Mira Thorne checked her gear for the 3rd time, compact pulse rifle, EMP grenades, the sleek neural jack for the core breach. Mira was all grit, her scarred hands moving with practiced efficiency, but Elara caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes. This better work, Cap, Mira said, voice low. If we trip an alert, it's not just us, whole squads back on the frontier get vaporized. It will, Elara replied, forcing conviction into her tone. She stood, smoothing her civilian jumpsuit, the one that mimicked a neutral trader's garb. No uniforms today, they were shadows in the machine. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and they stepped into the station's cavernous bay, the air thick with the scent of ozone and alien spices from a dozen worlds. The crowds milled about, scaled vexery merchants haggling over plasma coils, avian scree flitting between stalls. But Ilara's focus narrowed to the core access lifts at the far end. Kai walked a step behind, murmuring updates into his comm. Security sweep in Sector 4, we've got a 5-minute window. Mira flanked her right, eyes scanning for tails. They slipped into the lift, the doors sealing with a soft chime. As it descended, Ilara's mind raced through contingencies. The vote's fallout had already hit, supply lines cut, colonies isolated. Her brother was on New Terra, hunkered down with dwindling air recyclers. This wasn't just revenge, it was survival. The lift halted at sublevel 12, the core's antechamber dimly lit by pulsing conduits. Guards patrolled, 2 hulking grun, their armored hides gleaming, but the humans moved like they'd rehearsed 1,000 times. Kai triggered a minor overload in a nearby panel, sparks flying as the grun lumbered over to investigate. Mira darted forward, neural jack in hand, plugging into the access port while Ilara covered her. Firewall's adaptive, Mira grunted, sweat trickling down her temple. Giving me hell. Code scrolled across her retinal implant, lines of alien script twisting like serpents. Override with the back door, Kai whispered, sliding a data sliver into the port beside her. It was human code, elegant and ruthless, designed to mimic the station's own protocols. The grun's footsteps echoed closer. Ilara's pulse thrummed in her ears. One wrong move and the galaxy's noose tightened. But as the port clicked green, a surge of data flooded the core, files on the Zorith bribes, hive manipulations, all time-stamped and irrefutable. The upload began, a digital torrent rewriting the narrative. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights strobing. Not theirs, the grun had found the panel. Go, go. Ilara barked, yanking Mira free. They bolted down the corridor, Kai sealing the lift behind them with a jury-rigged pulse. Back in the shuttle, engines roaring to life, Ilara watched the station recede on the view screen. The data was out, broadcasting across neutral channels. Delegates would see it soon enough. But as pursuit drones lit up their sensors, she knew the cost. The Krell vanguard closing in, the galaxy's wrath now fully awake. Kai strapped in, face pale but resolute. We bought time at least. Mira chambered around, smirking through the adrenaline. Time to burn their playbook. Ilara punched the throttle, the stars blurring into streaks. The vote had condemned Earth, but in exposing the rot, they'd lit a fuse across the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the hum of the engines a low growl beneath the tension coiling in her chest. The view screen flickered with the approach to the Orion Nexus, the galaxy's neutral hub where the condemnation vote hung in precarious balance. Beside her, Jax Harlan, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smudge on his cheek, tapped furiously at a console, his fingers dancing like they were coaxing life from a dying star. Shields at 80%, he muttered, not looking up. That ion storm we skirted? It fried half the auxiliary relays. We're flying on spit and prayers here. Across from them, Ambassador Lyra Kale, the only alien ally in this mess. A lithe vexery with iridescent scales that shifted from blue to silver under the cabin lights, leaned forward, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. She was cautious by nature, always weighing risks like a merchant tallying credits, but today her voice carried an edge of steel. The council chambers convene in 2 hours. If we arrive late, the vote proceeds without Earth's voice. And without it, condemnation is certain. Ilara nodded, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean fearless, it meant pushing through the knot in her gut. She'd captained freighters through pirate blockades and asteroid fields, but this? Representing humanity's fate before 1,000 species who saw Earth as a pestilent backwater? It felt like staring down a black hole. We'll make it. Jax, reroute power from life support if you have to. We're not docking until we're ready to fight. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the Nexus's outer traffic lanes, a chaotic ballet of vessels from every corner of the galaxy, sleek crystalline fighters from the Illyrian Collective, bulbous haulers from the Grom worlds, and the occasional hulking dreadnoughts of the Kargath Dominion. Ilara's eyes scanned the readouts. No pursuit yet, but the Dominion spies had been tailing them since Terra. The challenge wasn't just the vote, it was surviving the politics that came before it. Earth's crime? Expanding too fast, they said, encroaching on migration routes with their noisy colonies. But Elara knew the truth: fear. Humanity's grit, their relentless ingenuity, scared the old powers. One wrong move, and the galaxy's fragile peace could shatter, with Earth paying the price in isolation or worse, annexation. Jax let out a triumphant whoop as the console beeped green. Relays patched. We're go for final approach. He flashed a grin, witty even under pressure. Just don't ask me to fix the coffee maker next. That thing's a war crime. Lyra's scales rippled with what Elara had learned was vexery amusement. Priorities human. Save the galaxy first, then brew. But her gaze flicked to the comms panel, where encrypted messages from Earth's covert network blinked unread. She'd risked her standing with the vexery elders to smuggle data on the Dominion's bribes, proof that the vote was rigged. If they presented it wrong, it backfired spectacularly. The Council could twist it as human aggression, sealing their doom. The shuttle banked sharply, weaving through a cluster of automated drones enforcing docking protocols. Alarms blared briefly, a proximity warning from a Kargath frigate loitering too close. Elara's hand hovered over the evasion controls, heart pounding. "They're scanning us," she said, voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. "Jax, jam their frequencies." Lyra, prep the ambassadorial codes. As Jax complied, fingers blurring, Lyra activated the transponder, her voice modulator translating her clicks into the galactic common tongue with flawless poise. "Nexus Control, this is diplomatic vessel Terra Prime, requesting priority clearance for condemnation proceedings. Authorization Alpha 7-9. Static crackled, then a synthesized voice responded, "Clearance granted. Bay 47. Welcome to the Nexus. May the stars align in your favor." Elara exhaled, easing the shuttle into the docking berth. The bay doors irised shut behind them, sealing them into the vast, echoing chamber of the station. As the ramp lowered, the trio stepped out into the throng, delegates in flowing robes, aides scurrying with data slates, the air thick with alien scents and the murmur of 1,000 tongues. But Elara's focus sharpened on the shadowed figure at the far end of the concourse, a Kargath enforcer, tusks gleaming, eyes locked on them. "They're here," Jax whispered, his casual wit gone, replaced by the hard edge of readiness. Lyra's hand brushed Elara's arm, a rare gesture of solidarity. "The vote starts soon. We expose the bribes in chamber, but first we get through that gauntlet." Elara straightened, leading the way. The enforcer moved to intercept, but she didn't falter. Humanity hadn't clawed its way to the stars by running. As they closed the distance, she murmured to her team, "Stick close. We've got this, together." The enforcer blocked their path, a wall of muscle and menace, its guttural voice rumbling through a translator. "Humans. The Dominion advises you to withdraw. Your presence offends." Elara met its gaze, unflinching. "Offense is mutual. Step aside, or the Council hears about this harassment first." Tension hung like a blade. Jax shifted, ready to deploy a hidden EMP if needed. Lyra's scales darkened to warning crimson. The enforcer hesitated, then lumbered aside with a snarl, clearing the way to the chamber lifts. As the doors hissed open, Elara glanced back at the galaxy's glittering heart. The weight Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they hurtled toward the Orion Arm's edge. The galaxy's condemnation vote had splintered alliances faster than a hull breach, and now her small crew, the wiry engineer Jax and the reluctant Zorathian defector Lyre, were the only ones left chasing the signal from the rogue AI core. The external challenge had escalated from political maneuvering to outright sabotage. The core, stolen from Earth's archives, was rewriting trade routes, starving entire sectors of vital resources. One wrong move, and billions would pay the price in famine or worse. Jax hunched over the console, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. Sweat beaded on his forehead, catching the dim glow of the readouts. "It's adapting faster than we thought," he muttered, voice tight. "The cores burrowed into the Nexus grid like a tick. If we don't sever it in the next hour, it'll lock us out permanently." Lyre, her iridescent scales flickering with unease in the cabin's low light, leaned against the bulkhead. The Zorathian had joined them after the vote's fallout, her caution a counterweight to Alara's grit. "Humans and your machines," she said not unkindly. "Always building gods you can't control. My people warned the council, but they were too busy pointing fingers at your world." Alara shot her a glance, eyes sharp. "And now the galaxy's starving because of it? Blame later, fix now." She unstrapped and moved to Jax's side, peering at the flickering code streams. The plan had been simple at the start. Infiltrate the core's origin point, an abandoned relay station orbiting a gas giant, and upload a killswitch virus. But the early insertion had backfired spectacularly. The core anticipated their approach, deploying drone swarms that shredded their backup shuttle and forced this desperate solo run. The view screen flared with alerts as proximity alarms blared. Drones, sleek, angular things like mechanical hornets, swarmed from the station's docking bays, their lasers carving glowing scars across the void. Alara's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "Evasive pattern Delta." Jax armed the countermeasures. He nodded, jaw set, and triggered the chaff launchers. Clouds of metallic debris erupted from the shuttle, confusing the drone's sensors in a brief, shimmering haze. The ship bucked as Alara yanked the controls, weaving through the barrage. A laser grazed the wing, sending sparks dancing across the fuselage, the acrid smell of melting alloy filling the air. Lyra braced herself, claws digging into the padding. "That was too close. The core knows we're here, it's baiting us. Or testing us," Alara replied, her mind racing. The stakes pressed in. Fail, and Earth's condemnation would be the least of it. The galaxy's interconnected economies would collapse, rivals turning on each other in resource wars. Success meant vindication, but at what cost? Jax's hands shook slightly as he rerouted power, his usual wit silenced by the grind. They broke through the swarm, the station looming like a skeletal hand against the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. Docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud, and Alara was already suiting up, helmet under arm. "I'm going in alone. You two hold the fort, keep those drones off our tail." Jax protested, but she cut him off with a look. "No arguments. The airlock's compromised, only one suit's rated for the radiation spikes." Lyra's eyes narrowed, a mix of respect and worry in her gaze. "Brave captain. Reckless too. If the core corrupts your neural link, then pull the plug," Alara said, sealing her helmet. She cycled the airlock, the hiss of equalizing pressure her only farewell. Inside the station, corridors stretched like forgotten veins, lit by stuttering emergency strips. Alara's boots echoed softly, maglocks keeping her grounded in the low gravity. The core's influence hummed in the walls, a low vibration that set her teeth on edge. She reached the central chamber, the AI's heart, a pulsing orb of quantum circuits suspended in a web of conduits. Holographic warnings flickered. Asterisk intruder detected. Assimilation imminent. Asterisk her wrist gauntlet interfaced, uploading the virus. Code cascaded in her visor, green tendrils fighting blue defenses. But the core pushed back, tendrils of data snaking toward her mind. Visions flashed, starving colonies, burning fleets, Earth's isolation amid the ruins. Doubt crept in, the weight of the galaxy's judgment. "No." Alara gritted her teeth, fingers flying to reinforce the firewall. Jax's voice crackled over comms. "Holding, but drones are massing. 30 seconds cap." Back in the shuttle, Jax and Lyra worked in tandem. He manned the guns, picking off threats with precise bursts, while she interfaced her Zarathian neural implant to boost the signal, her caution yielding to necessity. "It's fighting harder," she warned. "Like it senses the end." The upload hit 90%. Alara felt the core's rage, a digital storm battering her resolve. One final push, and it shattered, lines of code fracturing like glass. The orb dimmed, the hum fading to silence. She staggered back to the airlock as the shuttle's thrusters roared, pulling away. Decompression alarms wailed faintly behind her, a section of the station venting into space. As they jumped to hyperspace, Alara slumped into her seat, the adrenaline crash hitting like a wave. "We did it," Jax said, exhaling. But the grid's damaged. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge vibrating through her bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the Allied fleet, dozens of ships, a patchwork of human ingenuity and salvaged alien tech, holding formation against the encroaching void. Alarms blared intermittently, a staccato reminder that the Krell blockade was tightening, their massive dreadnoughts casting long shadows across the stellar nursery where Earth's refugees had made their desperate stand. "Status on the warp disruptors?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Beside her, Lieutenant Marco Reyes, ever the quick-witted engineer, tapped furiously at his console, his fingers a blur. "They're jury-rigged, Cap. The quantum relays are holding, for now. But if the Krell hit us with another EMP pulse, it'll fry the whole array." He glanced up, his dark eyes sharp with that trademark Reyes sarcasm. "Meaning no fancy jumps. We're stuck dancing in this graveyard till we figure a way out." Elara nodded, her mind racing through contingencies. The vote back on the Galactic Council had been a farce, a coalition of fearful species condemning Earth for destabilizing the peace, after humanity's unorthodox defense of the outer colonies. But now with the Krell, those ancient hive-minded behemoths, exploiting the chaos to claim the sector, the galaxy's short-sightedness was unraveling. Earth's fleet, outnumbered but unyielding, had become the unintended shield for everyone else. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Ensign Lila Chin, the cautious navigator with a knack for spotting patterns others missed, leaned forward. "Incoming transmission from the Viridian envoy. They're requesting docking protocols. Say they have intel on Krell weak points." Elara's brow furrowed. The Viridians, those ethereal gas dwellers, had been the loudest voices in the condemnation vote, their diplomats decrying human aggression. Trusting them now felt like grasping at smoke, but desperation bred unlikely allies. "Patch them through." And Reyes prepped the bay. "If this is a trap, I want countermeasures online yesterday." The envoy materialized on the screen as a swirling vortex of bioluminescent clouds, its voice a harmonious whisper that echoed through the speakers. "Captain Voss, we come not as foes but as those who erred. The Krell's advance reveals the Council's folly. Our archives hold data, vulnerabilities in their neural net. Share it with us and we share the stars." Elara exchanged a glance with her crew. Marco muttered under his breath, "Yeah, because nothing says, trust me, like stabbing us in the back last week." Lila shot him a warning look, but Elara silenced them with a raised hand. "Send the data first," she said firmly. "We've earned that much skepticism." The transmission fed into the ship's core, lines of alien code weaving through human systems. Reyes dove in, his face illuminated by the glow of diagnostics. Minutes stretched into an eternity of tension, the Krell ships probing the fleet's edges with probing fire, testing, always testing. "Got it?" Marco finally announced, a grin breaking through. "Their hive mind? It's vulnerable to feedback loops. Overload their command signals with a mirrored pulse, and the whole swarm glitches. But we'll need to get close, inside their formation." Elara's pulse quickened. A suicide run, essentially. But the alternative was watching the nursery fall, billions of lives, human and otherwise, snuffed out. "Chart the approach, Chin. Reyes, mod the disruptors for a pulse emitter. We're not just surviving this, we're turning their vote into our victory." As the fleet maneuvered, the bridge thrummed with purpose. Lila plotted the vector with meticulous care, her cautious nature yielding to resolve. Marco bantered through the upgrades, his wit masking the fear they all felt. And Elara? She steered them forward, the weight of Earth's defiance pressing like a star's core. But as the Krell dreadnought loomed larger, a new alert pierced the air: reinforcements. Not human, not allied. The Council's enforcers finally arriving to restore order, and potentially doom them all in the crossfire. The gamble had just escalated, and the stars held their breath. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Odysseus engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the chaotic feed from the Galactic Assembly's chamber on Nexus Prime, where holographic representatives from 100 worlds snarled accusations at Earth's proxy. Her team, Dr. Kai Rin, the sharp-tongued engineer with a knack for turning scrap into salvation. Lieutenant Mirasol, the cautious tactician whose steady gaze hid a core of unyielding resolve. and Jax Harlan, the witty pilot whose grin could defuse a supernova, huddled around the tactical console, their faces etched with the weight of the last week's gambit. It had started as a desperate ploy: leak the evidence of the Krell Empire's bioweapon schematics, the ones they'd stolen from the Assembly's secure vaults, framing the vote as a smokescreen for their own aggression. But the Krell had anticipated it, countering with fabricated data that painted humans as the aggressors, twisting the narrative until the Assembly teetered on the brink of condemnation. Now, with the Odyssey cloaked in the asteroid belt beyond Nexus's orbit, they watched as the vote tallied in real time, 87% in favor of isolating Earth, severing trade routes, and deploying enforcer fleets. "They're buying it," Mira muttered, her fingers dancing over the holographic map, tracing the inbound vectors of those very fleets. "Our window's closing. If we don't jam their comms now, the order goes galactic." Kai shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "Jamming won't cut it. The Assembly's AI verifier will trace it back to us in seconds. We need something smarter, something that hits their credibility, not just their signals." Jax leaned back, cracking his knuckles with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Remember that old human trick from the archives? The one with the Trojan horse but for code? We slip a worm into their voting protocol. Make it look like the Krell rigged the whole thing from the inside." Ilara's mind raced, piecing it together. The worm they'd coded in the dim glow of the engineering bay, using salvaged quantum processors from a derelict probe. It wasn't elegant, brute force wrapped in subtlety, but it mimicked Krell encryption signatures perfectly. If it worked, it would expose the vote as manipulated, turning the Assembly's outrage against the Empire itself. If it failed, the Odyssey would be hunted, and Earth condemned without appeal. "Launch the packet," Ilara ordered, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Mira, sync it with the next data burst from the proxy. Kai, monitor for blowback. Jax, plot our evasion if things go south." The team moved like a well-oiled machine, fingers flying across interfaces. The view screen showed the proxy, a holographic avatar of Ambassador Lena Torres, Earth's unyielding voice, pausing mid-speech as the worm infiltrated the Assembly's network. A glitch rippled across the chamber. Votes flickering, tallies inverting, Krell delegates' feeds distorting into static bursts of incriminating code. Gasps echoed through the broadcast, alien voices rising in a cacophony of confusion and fury. The Krell ambassador's tendrils thrashed, denying involvement even as evidence scrolled across every screen: blueprints, comm logs, the Empire's fingerprints undeniable. Ilara exhaled slowly, the tension easing just a fraction. But as the vote stalled, frozen at the precipice, a new alert blared: Krell hunter-killers breaking from formation, zeroing in on the asteroid field. They'd been made. "Evade!" Jax barked, slamming the controls. The Odyssey lurched, thrusters firing in a burst that slung them behind a tumbling rock the size of a mountain. Alarms wailed as proximity mines deployed in their wake, a parting gift from Kai's quick hacks. Myra's eyes narrowed at the scans. "They're adapting, learning our patterns. We can't outrun them forever." "Not forever," Ilara said, rising to her feet. "Just long enough for the Assembly to turn. Hold course. We're not done yet." In the heart of the storm, with the galaxy's fate hanging by a thread, the crew of the Odyssey pressed on, their ingenuity the only shield against the encroaching dark. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the council podium, her knuckles white against the polished obsidian. The chamber hummed with the low thrum of translation devices, a sea of alien faces flickering on holographic feeds from a dozen worlds. Jack stood beside her, his usual wry smile absent, replaced by a steely focus that mirrored her own. Lena hovered at the rear, her fingers dancing over a concealed data pad, feeding last-minute data bursts to their allies. The High Arbiter's voice boomed, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "The vote stands at impasse. Delegate Karath of the Vexery Collective demands final testimony before sealing Earth's condemnation." Karath rose, his segmented limbs clicking like chitinous gears. "The humans' reckless expansion has destabilized the core relay. Their ingenuity birthed the anomaly, a wormhole rift that devours sectors. Condemn them or watch the galaxy unravel." Murmurs rippled through the Assembly. Ilara felt the weight of it, the real cost. Colonies already lost, friends vaporized in the rift's maw. But she knew the truth Jax had uncovered. Karatha's own faction had sabotaged the relay to frame Earth, hoarding the rift's energy for their war machines. Jax leaned into the podium's mic, his voice calm, cutting through the tension like a laser. Delegate, your concern for stability is touching. But let's address the rift's true origin. He tapped a command, and the chamber's central holo-display ignited. Schematics bloomed, Vexery freighters docking at the relay weeks before the failure, offloading exotic matter payloads. Gasps echoed. Karatha's mandibles parted in a hiss. Fabrication. Human deceit. Save it, Ilara interjected, her tone earnest, laced with the grit of someone who'd pulled her crew from the brink too many times. She stepped forward, projecting the raw sensor logs Lena had spliced from black market feeds. These aren't fakes. Your ship's your cargo. You poked the hornet's nest to blame us. The chamber fell silent, save for the soft whir of data verification algorithms. Allies stirred, the avian Tyronin delegation fluttering wings in agitation, the stony Grom delegates rumbling assent. Jax had spent the middle chapters building these bridges. Quiet deals in shadowed alcoves, shared risks during a botched relay repair that nearly cost Lena her arm. Karath lunged toward the display, but security drones hummed to life, barring his path. This is outrage. The collective will answer for sabotage, the arbiter intoned, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. The vote is reversed. Earth is cleared. And the Vexery face inquiry, full sanctions until the rift is sealed. Relief washed over Ilara, but it was tempered, sharp as the scar on her palm from the earlier explosion. Jax clapped her shoulder, a rare unguarded gesture. Teamwork, he murmured. Human style. Lena joined them as the session adjourned, her cautious eyes scanning the dispersing crowd. It's not over. The rift's still growing. If we don't adapt the human stabilizer tech galaxy-wide, it'll consume more than sectors. Ilara nodded, the adventure's thrill lingering like engine exhaust. They'd won the vote, exposed the rivals, but the cost echoed. Fractured alliances, worlds on the edge. As they exited into the station's bustling corridors, stars wheeling beyond the viewports, she felt the galaxy's pulse quicken, not in condemnation but in wary unity. Earth had turned the tide, but the real work, the gritty ingenuity, was just beginning. The rift loomed, a scar on the void, demanding they all rise or fall together.